So, dude, what was your Generation X thing?
What do you mean?
What was your look?
Look, I
in
had
the 90s.
long, oily hair, I think, and a jean jacket that I always wore because I guess that was my armor because I thought this makes me cool.
You said it smelled too, right?
Because I never washed it.
Right.
Yeah.
That was typical teenager stuff.
Yeah, and then
I wore flannel and jeans.
I tried to put deodorant on it, whatever, but
why don't you just wash it?
Deo.
Why didn't you just wash it?
Yeah, why didn't he? I mean, okay, I didn't have a family. It's just my single dad who was just trying to make things work.
I knew you in the 90s, and your dad was married to your stepmom.
I thought you were talking about when I'm in school.
The 90s.
Middle school.
I'm talking about the 90s.
Oh, I went to middle school.
Yeah.
90s. Oh, that's when I told this story before, but I homeschooled myself because my dad was too lazy to do the work. So that was my 90s because I failed ninth grade because I missed too many days because I was working on his show.
His dream.
Yeah.
His dream overtook your
magic
education.
Show and whatever, yeah. So, yeah. I guess that's why I ended up with the whatever attitude because nothing did matter because, GED, great, I just skipped school and then technical college, sure, let's do TV, that sounds fun.
Did you listen to grunge?
Dude, I was heavy metal. Dude, Metallica was my church.
Did you bang your head? Were you a headbanger?
Oh, yeah. Dude, yeah, I had the...
Can you do that now? You're too old to bang your head now.
I will...
Your neck will fall.
I'll snap my neck and get paralyzed. It is an actual concern. I was told by doctors at one point, don't get in a car wreck and don't fall. Because if you land on your head wrong, you're fucked. I don't even know what episode this is.
This is
because
76.
Because this is jumping ahead of the other ones we have.
I just told you. It's 76.
You did maybe
I just
an
now
hour
told
and a
you.
half ago.
I just now said it out loud.
While I was talking?
While we're having this conversation. While we were having this conversation, I told you what take it was. Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie podcast, take 76.
And action. Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckemeyer, and as always,
the annoying balding Ewok.
Yes, yeah, he's doing his job. And again, like I was saying, I'm more excited about talking to you guys than I've been talking his ear off about you guys for like, I don't know, like a week now at least, because I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. Kevin T. Morales, Victoria Leigh, Bridget McGarry, and Patrick McGarry. Yeah. And those just sound like regular names, but Victoria and Bridget are high school students, 17-year-old high school students who are doing a Seed & Spark crowdfund for their feature film.
Their first, right?
Generation Rex, right?
Yeah. It's not REX.
It's Rex, as in Rex. I'm such a wreck. I'm such a wreck, yeah. Like you know that.
I'm a wreck, so I get it, yes.
And their dads are actually helping them produce and direct the thing, right?
Yes,
right.
that's right.
So how did this happen? How did this, because I know if my daughter asked me to do pretty much anything, I'd say yes too, so I get it. So
yeah.
Where did it all begin?
Where did it all begin? Yeah.
It actually was more of my dad coming to Bridget and I and being like, I have this idea for this movie about my generation, but I don't want to write it because then it'll turn into a total nostalgia fest.
Yeah. So what happened is we met over lunch in the city back in the summer of 2017. So the beginning of the summer of 2017, and we were all eating lunch. And
except my dad didn't eat; he was talking.
Right.
Yes. He was
You
talking
can't
to
tell when you look at me that I don't eat, but
One thing at a time, talk or
Just sat
eat.
there. We're laughing at it.
He just likes to be focused. It's like one thing at a time, talking or eating. So,
I was excited.
I was excited.
How these guys met, actually going back even like, was it 15 when you guys met first?
Yeah. Well, I was almost 15. Yeah.
No, in 2015.
Oh, in 2015, yeah. We met on the set of Law and Order, and we played sisters in an episode of SVU called
I
Patrick
saw
McGarry.
that. Yes.
It
Yes.
was based
Yeah.
off of the Duggars.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
actually seen that episode?
I have nothing to do all day.
But you've seen their episode?
Yes, I remember.
I've never seen an
It's my
episode of.
monster.
I've never seen one episode of Law and Order. Sorry, I know it's the, I know that.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
That's all you need to know.
So you guys are both been professional actors for a while.
I've been acting professionally since I was 7.
Yeah,
I've been doing it since I was 8, so, like, yeah.
Pretty much. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I could talk to you a whole other episode about how you guys got started doing that at such a young age, and whether your parents forced you into it or not.
Ew.
We tried to talk them out of it a few times, but she was hell-bent
Oh,
on
no.
staying in the acting community.
Yeah,
I love
that's cool.
acting more than, like, anything, so
Yeah.
I can't be deterred because this is, like, my life's passion, and, even though there's, like, like a ton of rejection and all of that stuff, which is, like, a whole other thing, but, it's, what you love, and you gotta just follow your passions because...
And
Yeah.
at this point, you've been doing that professionally for almost 10 years. So you're like practically a veteran, I guess. Like you could even say at this point, because you've
I
been
guess
doing it for so long.
Yeah.
They really are. Like all the casting directors in the city like know them. I mean, they've been coming in for years.
I walked into an audition today, and the woman was like, "Oh my God, you're so grown! You didn't even have to have your parents take you to this audition. Like, when did you get so old?" And I was like, "The past 10 years."
You
She's
must.
like, "Wow, you're so big now." And I was like, "I don't know who you are."
You must
Don't admit
love
that.
hearing that.
I just,
What if she listens to this and is like, "How dare that actress not know who I am? I'll never bring her in again.
So that's
She'll
pretty.
never leave this town again."
That's pretty much my response to everyone because I don't remember
Yeah, he
anyone.
doesn't remember anything. He doesn't remember details. He doesn't even remember what a detail is, so he doesn't pay attention for them.
Yeah.
What's a detail? Is that a detail? So so you guys met on the set of Law and Order.
Yeah.
We were already getting paid at 7 and 8 years old, you said?
Yeah.
Young kids. Yeah. That must be nice.
the checks for 3 cents every once in a while are great.
Yeah, that's cool.
It beats a paper route, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's probably better than working at Target or Chick-fil-A or something, Down here everybody works at Chick-fil-A. They haven't caught on to the whole thing about Chick-fil-A yet, but
I love
I know it's a real it's a real thing right now. I'm not sure how to feel about it, but they do have good chicken nuggets. It's like I tell my students, you got to go get a technical skill to go be good at something that's not flipping burgers, because not only will you most likely be paid more than minimum wage, which everybody's complaining about, but also it's way more fun doing something that's not like a service job, so
Right,
much more
something
fun.
You're good at, something that you have confidence in.
Yeah. So
And they're not going to be immune to. I mean, they're. I can sort of at least speak for Victoria. That they're going to have to do jobs that are not, that don't come with a trailer and residuals and stuff.
This is not that
Yeah.
reliable.
Yeah, it's not. It's a volatile industry, and if there happens to be a role for you, then there's something to go out for. But if not, I think a couple years ago, it was suddenly there were all these family comedies, and there was all these roles to go out for, and it was the
A Modern Family boom.
yeah, it was the Modern Family boom and Parenthood, all these shows, right? And then somehow that kind of became passe for a little while, and then there was nothing, and it kind of dried up, and suddenly it was only here's an audition for this girl that gets duct taped in a trunk in this indie horror film. You're like, okay, great. So
I've been wanting to do that to Brad for a long time.
Would recommend it.
So part of the reason to at least from my end, encouraging Victoria to at least write, is to have some agency in her career and to say, okay, well, I'm going to write the role that I want to see in the world. I'm going to tell the story I want to see.
And my dad has been trying to get me to write something with him since I was like 9 years old.
Yeah. So he finally wore you down over lunch one day in the city.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you guys, you just pitched the idea to them and they took it and ran, or did it take convincing, or how did the adult side of things come into play?
So I am working in television a lot, writing series, pitching them, and I've been having a lot of conversations with various like producers and networks. And I had a brief conversation before I talked to them with someone, and I'm not going to say who their name is, but we were just talking about the current political situation and how in 2016, this was like even before the election, but we could already see that it was going to be crazy. And we were talking about what Generation X is contributing to the current landscape, which largely seems to be a battle between like baby boomers and millennials. This sort of, generation that wants things to kind of be the way they were, and this generation that's come along and said, you know what, that's actually like a pretty toxic, awful way of doing things. And somewhere in the middle is this small generation who had whose parents had the highest divorce rate in the history of the world, who grew up with headphones, and came home to houses that mostly didn't have anyone in them until someone got home from work or whatever. But still remember what a library looks like. Right. Yeah. Like we have, it's sort of like we have 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future. Yeah, exactly. And to some degree that's paralyzed us in a way where we're sort of on the sidelines, and I'm making gross generalizations, but, and I was just talking with this executive, and I was saying that I think it would be fascinating if you could find a film that said, let's look backwards, like let's look back 25 years. Could we see this group of people becoming this way? The like, what's your damage, Heather, whatever, slacker generation, right? Like, and here we are. And it's not to say that we're all lazy because Jeff Bezos is Generation X. You know what I mean? Like every major app you use on your phone has been developed by someone in Generation X. But also, like, you can tell it's been developed by someone because they're like, what would be great is if someone just brought me my food and I didn't have to go out and interact with people. Like, there's this really fascinating. So at first I was like, I'm going to write a movie about what it was like to be a teenager, like in the late 80s, like early 90s. And then I was like, no, that would be like the worst thing to do, because it was just so cliche. Yes. It's like Reality Bites, but like the look back at Reality Bites as opposed to actually Reality Bites. Yeah, exactly. Like I could immediately just play this horrible movie in my head. Yeah. And there's so much in the industry right now about representation, right? Like who is telling whose story and who has the right to a story, and certainly I have the right to tell the story as someone who was a junior in 1994. Yeah. But as far as representation goes, I was really like, what I wish I could capture was like that energy level that I had when I was 17. Yeah. And thinking that what 17-year-olds think is so crucial and so important that I now no longer think was important. I couldn't figure out how to like, I would have to work so hard to try and capture that. Yeah. But living in my house is someone who doesn't matter whether it's 2016 or 1996, like being 17 is sort of being 17. Yeah. And so we had lunch and I was talking to Patrick and the girls, and I said, would you guys write a movie for me? And I'll help, oversee it, and you know,
Edit
obviously,
and help us with all
right.
that.
The girls were starting from scratch in a lot of ways. Like, you know,
You gave us a plot line.
yeah, I said, here's a basic premise. We all sat down and we watched The Big Chill.
Yeah, I saw that on your post, and I thought I didn't know how much of it was like adult influence. I'm like, these kids. If I asked every single one of my students, I teach TV production, so I have like some film nerds in my class. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, none of them would even know what The Big Chill was.
Well, I actually did a poll on the Generation Rex Instagram story asking, like, who has seen this movie? And everyone who clicked yes was either one of my dad's friends or someone who was older than, like, 30. Yeah. Or it was Bridget, me, and my little brother.
Right.
But complained about it, that we were watching it. And then, like,
Brad, have you seen The Big Chill?
Long time ago. Yeah, I need to see it again.
Yeah, even Brad's seen it, and he only watches horror movies.
And
that's not true, but yeah.
but the idea was is I wanted the girls to see it and say, look, this largely just takes place in one location.
Yeah. And
it's not plot heavy. It really isn't. It's about a group of people who are looking backwards and saying, what happened to us? We used to be activists. We used to be hippies. We used to, you know, do all these things, and now we're yuppies. It was the baby boomers saying, like, what is happening to us? We're like in our 30s, like, what's going on? Like, you know, kind of entering midlife crisis. And I said, somewhere there's a movie that could be like this, contained and featuring an ensemble. Mm-hmm. But what if instead of looking backwards, we as the filmmakers are looking backwards, but what if it's about kids who are looking forwards?
Yeah.
Who have college applications, and in the script there's an assignment that they've been given where they're supposed to talk about what's going to be happening in 25 years. And so I just said, like, let's just start here. Like, just start creating characters. Here's a simple premise, and then let's just see what we get.
And the movie was designed to be makeable. Like, part of the reason that, like, my dad, like, pitched it to us is he was like, we know the cabin that we can make it in. And my dad and I one day were just, like, talking about, like, Bridget and I have a whole bunch of, like, friends our age who are also actors. Yeah. Like, who would be willing to make a movie with us? Like, you know, and so part of what's built into the movie, and one of the lessons for Bridget and I, is how do you write something for yourself that is feasible to make? Yeah. Like, a location that you know that you have, a plot that you know you can execute, people that you know you can cast. Like, how do you make it so that it's possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can, like, you know, write, like, a really fantastic script, but if it's, like, some sci-fi movie that would cost, like, you know, like $100 million to make or something, it's just, like, you can't, like, feasibly make it and make it look good, too, because we really want this to be, like, a quality movie that is going to be something that, you know, we can really be proud of, and, like, we're like, oh yeah, this is, like, the quality that we want for something that we put so much effort and work into. You know, and we really, you know, kept that into consideration. And I think it's hopefully it's going to pay off, because it's going to be a really fun project to do.
We've just this last year finished a feature film that we did basically the same thing. We knew like, what could we do? We had like basically 4 or 5 people in the movie. You know, there was a party scene where there was more people, but there was like 80% of it takes place in an enclosed space, the same location, and it's just like a character study with some like turn the screws tension as you go. You guys are talking, and it sounds like Breakfast Club too.
Also,
it is. It's the Breakfast Club and the Big Chill. If you want the elevator pitch.
But I have to point out how annoying it is that it took us like 40 years to realize, oh, let's make a movie with what we have available. We could do this, that, and the other.
It didn't take
and they're doing it at 17.
Well, it didn't take 40 years to realize it.
I'm just joking.
But, I mean...
But there's just...
ability to make things. We have computers that can edit with programs. Like, we have... great cameras in our pockets. Like it's a lot easier for our generation to go out there and be like, we want to make a movie, because there are sites like Seed and Spark.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, that's true.
My
That
dad,
is true.
That's true.
He was 17.
Yeah, we had DV tape.
Yeah. Do you guys remember tape? The adults in the room, do you guys remember tape?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Why do you, you got like sad. Yeah, I remember tape.
I shot a feature in 2003 on like 2 Sony PD-150s.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, and God bless standard definition. And I think
We shot
many things past that just don't hold up anymore because
we shot one in like 2001 or 2, and we never really finished it because we overextended our resources. Like we wrote a thing that we could almost make but couldn't really, and we worked on it for so long. Yeah. And then Becca Meyer got divorced, and it sort of messed things up too.
Memories.
Yeah.
But what I've really wanted, or the thing that I observed, which has been crazy, was with Victoria, and I'm sure the same has been for Bridget. Like, because they've been growing up with it. You know, my daughter's been growing up at backstage at Broadway theaters since she can remember, and she's just been around it. And it's not that she doesn't see that it is special, but she's just not as afraid of it as someone who's going to high school somewhere in the middle of the country, and they've never been on a set. They've never had to be there for call time. They've never walked into an audition. They've never had 50 crew members like standing around waiting for them to cry, you know, like, but because these kids have grown up with it, they've adapted to it, you know, like if you raise kids on a farm, they like know how to farm. Like these girls like know instinctively and skillfully, like what good dialogue sounds like. You know, like they know what it's like to have bad dialogue. So even as the girls have been writing, Bridget has like been really super sharp with just like, I don't like how this sounds, like, you know, and it's funny because I go through the script and I'm like, you didn't use any question marks. And they're like,
oh my God, no offense to the teenagers, they don't know how to punctuate anything because they're writing in text speak.
WTF.
They don't do it in their text messages. They don't.
Grammar.
No capital, there it is. No question marks, nothing.
But yeah, like it's so weird because when we were writing, it's just we're using the plot devices that you study like in class and stuff, but like we don't even realize we're doing it. I went to this NYU summer program over the summer where it's writing your own TV pilot, and we had Michael Zam, who created the TV show Feud, and he was teaching the class, and he was, you know, saying, okay, these are the plot devices that you have to use. And I was like, oh my God, I've been using that, and I haven't even been realizing it, because when you get an audition, you oftentimes get the whole script. So we've been reading fantastic scripts for years, and it's just kind of like we've just been like learning as
osmosis
scripts, and it's like it was just in a way like second nature because we're so used to, you know, the format and everything. And there was a few formatting issues. We're like, oh yeah, we got to fix this format or fix this a little bit or make this shorter. But like for the most part, it wasn't as much of a challenge as we thought it would be. I think it was, you know, it seems a little bit daunting, but then like when you get into it, it's just like, oh yeah, this, da, 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 da. And then before you know it, you're like done with like, you know, 20 pages in like five hours.
Our biggest script problem is that we wrote too much.
But they've started at such a great place, and I could kind of come in and sort of be like, okay, let's look at this scene, and they instinctively have written like a good scene, and then just by sort of giving them a little bit more of insight into, you know, what is the conflict, what is the action, like what is the reverse that occurs in this scene, and then kind of giving them the actual formula. No, it's not a formula, but like the actual language and the ability to break down a scene and go like, oh, okay, so I see, like this, the reason the scene's kind of not working is because none of these characters are in conflict. Like there's no one trying to get something from someone else. There's nothing in the way. So how can we fix that? And it's just been great to go through and show them with their own work. You know, we've had 2 readings of this thing. And after the last reading, do you want to tell them the big conclusion you came to?
So we were getting love notes on this character, Dana. And Dana was kind of the, like, quirky best friend, you know? And she just wasn't working. And I was holding on for dear life because I am a stubborn human being by nature, and I like low conflict situations. And so I created this character that's good at diffusing conflict. I say I mean we, but we're blaming it on me. So we were sitting there, and one of the notes that my dad's friend gave was that maybe we should combine Dana with this character, Rebecca, and this other character, Tony, who was giving us trouble, with this character, Shane. And Tony and Shane cannot be combined. And Rebecca is already a good, strong, working character. And I was sitting there, and mind you, this was like 1 a.m. And I just went, I hate to say this, but I think we should combine Tony and Dana. And then Dana died. And it was really hard to deal with. It was like losing my pacifiers all over again.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, I mean, it's a cliche at this point, but you got to kill your darlings, kill your babies, you know. And you got to be willing to do it, because really what you want to do is you have to remind yourself, and all writers have to deal with this, like they have to make the tough decisions so that they have a good screenplay or a good film over what they have they're most like emotionally attached to. So many times, and I've heard about it, it's happened to me, things you write in a thing and you're like, this is going to be my favorite part of the thing, and then you get there and on production somebody really just butchers it and it's ruined and you have to cut it out of the movie, or you ran out of time, or by the way, it just doesn't work here like you thought it did. Now that you see it in the flow, and you have to cut it out, and it may be the one thing that you were holding on to why you wanted to do the thing in the first place. You just have to like be able to make you have to be like, you know, litigious, but also really, you know, willing to use that like axe and just chop it out if you have to.
I love the idea of the actors I don't want to say reverse engineering, but using the acting techniques to write a script, because even if you don't know, like we've been doing shows on what is it, the hero's journey and 3-act structure and all that. But that's another way you can write, is with your acting experience.
Absolutely. And I think more writers should take a basic acting class, because my production company, I see a lot of scripts, and the number one problem, like across the board, is you read a scene and you say, I don't know what someone wanted in this scene. And even if you could tell what someone wanted, there was nothing in their way. So if there isn't conflict and someone isn't taking action to deal with the conflict, there's nothing there. And people like to really write like these sort of like memory plays of like, oh, I remember sitting on my car and feeling this way. It's like, okay, but what does this character want?
You can't act a feeling. You can act an action at somebody when you have an objective, but you can't play angry. You have to play that you want to strangle somebody. No. Yeah. You know, but not actually, but like, you know, with your words.
Yeah.
The first thing that I think of is when I get my sides for the audition, like you only have, you know, like a day and a half or like a day even to, you know, get your lines memorized, get it all done, and go in for the audition. And it's the first thing I do is I read the scene and I'm like, okay, what's the objective? Because that's like the one thing that will start the snowball rolling. And if there is no objective, then it's like you get really confused and you're like, what's going, like for some of those indie projects or like some certain projects, and you're like, wait, where's the objective? I can't find it. Like, and it's harder, and then you gotta like make it up. But like when there's like a clear objective, that's when it really is so great, and you can really like do a lot of great things with it because you have a clear need, and you really need that.
Do you guys practice Meisner, or what acting techniques?
I've been training at Stella Adler since I was 14, so I've been going there for a while. I kind of combine everything. I do a little bit of everything. Like I've done some Meisner, I've done some Strasberg, I've done some Adler. I kind of just like all mush it all up and like whatever makes sense for the character. Yeah.
I go to a performing arts high school in New York City, and so every day I have 2 hours of acting class. And we learned a lot of Meisner in freshman year, but then as we moved kind of away from that, they stopped telling us what methods we were learning. So I have a hard time differentiating what the different things that I've learned are. But for the most part, a lot of it is like action objective based and like as if based. And then we also kind of just learn everything, and we've had to take movement classes and devising classes and voice and speech classes. So we have very broad training.
Well,
That's awesome.
It's not that is awesome. Plus, I was a musician in high school. I wasn't a filmmaker yet. I would have loved to have been at a performing arts school, because really the only reason I went to school all the way through my senior year was because of music. Like band got me through high school, you know. If I could have had a whole day doing like that sort of stuff instead of like failing math 4 years in a row, it would have been so good for me. I would have come out of high school. I would have come out of high school not hating myself, probably. So when Reality Bites came out, that was like me, man. I got it. So, but so many times, like you do something for so long. You guys have been doing it for a really long time at this point, like 10 years. When you do something for so long, it's not like you can stop, like, practicing or learning or working or taking on new things, but it does sort of become second nature for you, and you don't even, it's almost like not having to think about it in your head. It just naturally something you do. When I've been writing for a long time now, and I don't have to think about 3-act structure as I'm writing it. It just sort of comes out that way when I'm mapping it out. I'm like, you have to tweak things into place once you get it all down on the page and stuff like that. I don't have to think about it though, like, okay, I'm supposed to do this here in this moment. And it's weird, because the better you get at that, the more second nature it comes. It also seems less like heavy-handed when you're writing. It's like, it's not this is the obvious moment where everything has to, like, so that everything falls apart so that they can, in the end. It just sort of naturally works its way that way, and it seems more organic because you're not physically forcing it into place.
Like character-driven.
Yeah. So acting, I imagine acting or any other, like, performance or skill really is the same way. It's like once you get to the point where it's, what do they say? Learn your lines and then forget your lines, you know?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, if you want it to feel like the first time every time, make it the first time every time. You don't sit there and you're thinking of, you're just not just barely off book or whatever so that you know your lines. You just want to just react, really. And that's how it is for me for writing. So,
yeah, like you don't think about tying your shoelaces while you're tying your shoelaces.
Right.
You just do it.
Right,
because you learned it, and you practiced it a bunch, and then finally one day it became second nature.
He still uses Velcro.
Velcro.
I'm just kidding.
No, I just leave them tied and slip the shoe on and off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's awesome. And you decided, so this was 2 years ago, basically, you started working on this. Or a year and a half ago. You said Christmas of 2017, right? All right, so coming up on a year and a half.
Yeah, there's another question I want to get to before we end.
I'm not, okay.
But we need to find out, they have a successful crowdfunding campaign, so we got to delve into...
Okay. I was just about to go into that.
Go
Thanks
ahead,
for
sir.
interrupting.
I just want to contribute.
I'm just going to sit here and let you interrupt for a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
No, so that's what I was going to talk to you about is your Seed and Spark. So...
Ding, that was your idea?
Yeah, the bright idea. So,
sorry.
That's okay. So you have just at the time of this recording, like overnight got like the green light for Seed and Spark, which basically means you've raised 80% of the money that you were trying to get, right? Mm-hmm. And so that must feel good. It must feel great.
It feels good.
So by the time I came into awareness of your project, when your dad kept his promise to you and direct messaged me on Twitter.
I'm still doing that, by the way. It's taking so long.
But yeah, so I've noticed, by the way, you make your dad do all the hard, tough, embarrassing stuff, and you just get to be in front of the camera and go, look, we're cute, we're making a movie.
I am busy.
So all the soul sucking stuff goes to, hey, Dad, you got to work this out. I'm just kidding. So by the time I became aware of you guys, though, you guys had already raised like almost $12,000, I think, 11,000. You're trying to reach something like 14 or 15,000 something.
$14,780.
I have a question about that exact number. Like, I don't really. When I said to Brad, I'm like, "What? This is an odd number to see exact, like, right on the nose number." But so
that's Seed and Spark's fault.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they make you write out a wish list of like how much each thing's going to cost.
Right.
And then we were aiming for 14,000 because that's my lucky number, and we went over a little bit.
Yeah, I remember we did Seed and Spark too. Ours didn't succeed though, by the way. It's just to make you feel guilty. So you guys are basically you are the youngest people I've ever met. I know there have been young people to do crowdfunds, but you're the youngest people I've ever met to spearhead a crowdfunding campaign
for a film.
For a feature film, by the way.
Yeah.
I told your dad I'm going to use the whole thing here to make my students feel lazy because they're all your age and they just sit around with their thumb up their ass acting like, oh, nothing matters. Nothing matters because it's just like, who cares? It's too cool. I'm too cool to give a shit about anything.
Yeah.
And so I wanted, like, what's that been like for you? Was it like, I know it's really stressful. I've run successful and unsuccessful campaigns before, so I know it's stressful every time when you go, okay, we're going to go live, click. When did you have your meltdown?
I want to talk about my most recent one?
Yeah, sure.
I think I've never had like I would say I'm a person who lives at a very high stress level because I care very deeply about a lot of things. Yeah. But I also care about people's emotions a lot. Yeah. And I don't want to make people feel bad. Yeah. So I think a lot of my like stress when it came to this project came around like I want to make sure that like people feel included and that I'm not being rude or exploiting people or like, you know, giving undue emotional turmoil to other people. That means that I would like do a lot of like extra work that maybe was unnecessary because of it. And then there was just the stress of like
sounds like the weight of the world.
Yeah.
And like luckily I had Bridget, so that was helpful to also have somebody who like kind of didn't know what they were doing, but like was willing to just like work through things with me. But like it's been crazy, and we watch people do these things a lot. You know, like you scroll through your Instagram feed, somebody's always raising money. You listen to podcasts, and they're like, "Here's my Patreon, like support this." You follow artists who are trying to get their comics made. Like you see things like this happening. So a lot of it has been like osmosis, but like it's been hard balancing this in high school and my school play and sitting there during my free periods and being like, okay, I have 15 minutes to do each of these activities. I'm going to send 5 emails, and then I'm going to do my chemistry homework, and then I'm going to work on my public policy paper, and then I'm going to send 5 more emails, and then I'm going to post on the like Generation Rex Instagram page and be like, I'm doing all the things, and sometimes I don't do all the things, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, so chemistry homework just doesn't happen.
Puts
right?
me to shame. Like I have one, I have play Spider-Man on my list, and eat and go to bed. That's my list.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a healthy or not so healthy amount of me like doing nothing and sitting there and like reading a book for an hour and being like,
man, you got to do it. You got to do it. You need your downtime so you can have all that like youthful energy that you have summoned. You know, you got to have some like reset time. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's been stressful for me too. Like at the start of the campaign, I would like sit in class and I like take a peek at my phone and I'm like, oh, where are we at now?
Yeah.
What are we at now?
Oh,
It's impossible not to check that. You try to be, I'm going to be cool this time and not stress out about it, but it's like...
and you wouldn't let me not stress it. Like, I wouldn't look and pay attention, but every time you saw me, you'd let me know.
Yeah, because
nothing's happening.
You're living in a fantasy world where things don't matter, but I'm over here going, this is a movie. We got to get the movie made. Yeah. So how did you? Okay, so this is the crowdfund. You guys are doing that. So for those of you that are listening that may or may not, I don't know how you'd be listening to Film Reverie and not know how Seed and Spark works, but maybe this is your first thing. So Seed and Spark works where you set an amount of money that you're trying to raise, and once you hit 80% of that money raised, you get greenlit. You get a green light, and you're able to keep whatever money you raised to that point and above. Okay. So. It's great to get a green light, and I love the term green light because it's like an industry term. You got a green light. You know, you get to say we got a green light. But so how are you going to? Do you know what your? Because you mentioned in your pitch video, which is hilarious, by the way. The funniest line I think is when you say, "Dad, the patriarchy says I need 10 years of directing experience to make my own movie," and then whatever you said to your dad to convince him into. I thought that was funny, and the thing about that is those are very 2019 terms and terminology and what's the word? Manners of speak. Colloquialisms is what word I'm thinking of. How much of that is going to be like inserted into your film, like so that it feels like a movie about 2019, but it's also set in 1994? You said 1990s.
Well, I know that every time I have to Google 90s slang, Google reminds me how many times I visited this one page that has a whole bunch of 90s slang, and it's about 14 times. So there was a lot of that. Bridget and I did a healthy amount of research, watching Clueless so many times.
Oh my God!
And we had these interviews that were from like my dad's friends who were also juniors in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I had this idea of. I knew the girls needed a little bit of like a crash course in
the 90s, yeah.
In the 90s, and there's
born in the stuff, so we weren't even alive then. So
right, yeah. Shut up.
And you can watch, you can watch like The Craft and Empire Records and like Wayne's World, and you can like get Hollywood's idea of the 90s.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did was I reached out to like people I went to high school with. I made like a Facebook post and I just said, if you had been in high school in like the mid to late 80s to like mid 90s, I have a survey of 10 questions and I want you to just answer whatever you want, honestly, at least. But if you want to skip a question, go right ahead. And I collected about 50 of these surveys for the girls to read. And you guys can talk about your experience reading them, but the questions were a lot of like, what did you spend your money on? Like, what was your experience with politics? Like, like these girls know who the Secretary of Education is. I didn't fucking know who the Secretary of Education was.
No. I didn't either until I was almost probably 30.
Yeah. So, for that, so they needed to be able to see how being 17 is the same no matter where you are, but then like what the cultural differences were.
Do you think that we have? I'm sorry. Do you think we? Just a second. Do you think we raised our kids to be more like socially aware? Because when I grew up, I'm just like you. I was not very socially aware. I grew up in suburbia. Suburbia used to be this like off in the thing where it's like it was almost like a fantasy world where like reality didn't really sit in. You got to come to suburbia and everybody's lights were on the porch and you had to come in and MTV and all that stuff. But I wasn't very socially aware until I was in my mid-20s. And I got to be like married and I started thinking about like I had a kid when I was like almost 30. So I started thinking, I better do some homework and figure this shit out so that my kid doesn't get raised like daft about this stuff, and doesn't know anything. But it was a reaction to how I felt like I was raised and how I felt like I wasn't very like educated on that stuff. Like I was smart about things, but I wasn't like aware of the world outside of me. I was just like a regular white kid from the suburbs, and I didn't really think much about anybody else's problems. It just, we were all alive on the same rock at the same time. It just seemed like, oh, okay. But the older I got and the closer I got to having a kid that I needed to raise in a certain way, I felt, I guess, more compelled to like just spotlight things for her that I never felt like were spotlighted for me.
Is that a question?
That was a long question, yeah.
Also had the input of all the social media and able to get the information at a moment's notice on your cell phone, which we didn't have back in the 90s.
Yeah.
You basically had the news was on when you got home with your parents were watching the news. You maybe got a glimpse of about maybe 10 minutes of it, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
And then you go out and you didn't have it to where you can check Twitter and see what's going on and see what people's opinions are across different parts of the country. Yeah. So it was a completely different environment, which we weren't exposed to that these kids are. Yeah. And they can get it at any moment of any day. They can get information.
And you really can't get away from it. I think that a lot of kids' anxiety and a lot of everybody's anxiety and really depression and like feeling at wit's end is that 24-hour news cycle and the social media. You want to go on Twitter and think, oh, I'm just going to chat with some people for a few minutes. And then it's like everybody is screaming at you about something different. And it's like, it's stressful sometimes to be on there. And we didn't have any of that. We literally did. If we were bullied at school, we got to go home where we weren't bullied. And then we got to go back to school the next day and we were bullied just for a few hours. And then we went home. But like social media, it doesn't stop. You were bullied 24 hours a day, and I wasn't bullied. You were.
No. I think they couldn't see me. I got lost in the crowd.
Yeah, they're only bullying people at eye level. If they look down on you, they're like, okay, I already feel bad for this guy. Yeah.
Like the main cultural difference between, us and then like Generation X is really like the internet, because that completely changed everything. And it's just like, it changed the way people interact. It changed the way that, we even talk to each other like in real life, and like how it's so weird how you can like Snapchat somebody, but then like not talk to them in real life. Yeah. It's like such a weird thing. And it's navigating that. And like, that was like the biggest difference. Like when we looked at the surveys and stuff, you don't have your phones to escape to, you don't have the internet to escape to. So it's kind of like, what happens when you don't have like that instant escape, like we have now? It's just like they did different things.
I'll tell you, road trips were terrible. They were terrible. You would sit, I remember driving down the road to
the Thomas Guide,
the mountains, and my dad started reading like Huckleberry Finn or something. I remember falling asleep for 2 hours and waking up, and my dad was still reading it out loud to everybody. And we're like, we're all asleep. Like, what is he doing? Like, on road trips, you didn't have portable CD players at a certain point. At a certain point, we did, but we didn't have MP3 players. You just looked out the window and contemplated the dark meaning of your life. You're just like staring at the like trees going by. And that's what you did for pastime. Like, guys, like there's so much stuff now to keep you preoccupied that we don't have any of that. Like Angry Birds, that would have killed for some Angry Birds back then.
But I think that was like some of our anxiety was like the lack of connection. Yeah. Because I just remember, right after 8th grade, a girlfriend I had like moved away, and it was like, guess I'll never see her again. She just moved.
Gone.
Completely out of my life. Yeah. Like, what? I was gonna call her long distance.
No, you're gonna write a letter, and it's gonna take
about the phone bill. Like, that's not possible.
You were gonna write a handwritten letter, and it was gonna take 3 days to get there.
Yeah, and like the thing you talk about, like the suburbs, like it was this creation of sort of like to protect, not even to protect, but to like isolate us and to create this like utopia. Yeah. Like, that's where I think like so much of our anxiety came from, was like realizing this thing was false.
Fake, yeah. It's a ruse.
You know, like, mommy and daddy weren't happy. Yeah. No one was happy, but we were supposed to be happy. Mm-hmm. You know, but like, I just remember I went to this really uber hippie progressive boarding school outside San Francisco. So my high school experience was definitely not the same as other people's, but the suburb that the high school was in, I just remember kids being like, guess we're going to go to Travis's and just get drunk. And like,
yeah.
And one of us is going to crash a car eventually. You know what I mean? Like, there was so much needless angst over nothing, but you could feel like that there was something insincere, unauthentic, fake about what was happening.
Whereas, like, Bridget and I's generation knows something is wrong, but feel powerless to stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, not totally powerless.
Well,
but it's
because the thing is that you're not powerless, but you also kind of are, because it feels like the machine is going to spin. We live, like, I don't know if you guys saw Sorry to Bother You. Did you guys see that?
Oh, no, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. There's a section in that movie where there's a CEO who has, like, this stuff, and it comes out that he did this terrible thing. This horrible thing. He's like testing on human trial tests, and he's I won't even say what it is because it's a spoiler for the movie. But
also, it's
upsetting and disturbing.
Very R-rated, that part.
But when people find out about it, it's like, even though it was awful and everything, the stock for his company went up and he made $100 million overnight. It's like, it's almost like even if you do shitty things, you still can like profit off of it. You know, you can profit off of being great, or you can profit off being shitty. And it's like there's almost no difference, because nobody cares as long as they can figure out how to make a profit off of it. Mm-hmm. And this thing, when you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just, and he leaned over to me at one point and said, "That's Trump." No matter what he does, it's a cockroach. He won't go away. And it's not true, but it's true. Like you were saying, feeling powerless. It does feel powerless, because it's just, you hear people, we'll just say people, lying all the time, and nothing ever happens from it. You can see right through it. You're lying, but why are you still able to stand there and lie and have people go, he's lying, but, you know, it does feel like you can't do much about it.
Powerless,
yeah.
like they were saying.
Except to point it out and get pissed about it on Twitter, like everybody else.
Put a sad face on it on Facebook or something.
Sad face, yeah.
I think this is, like, you know, with us, like, young people, is that, yeah, like, we may be, like, you know, active and all of that stuff and really invested in, like, what's going on in our country, but our age group does not vote at the numbers we should be, and that means, like, you know, our representatives, like, won't, like, listen to that age group and what they want as much, because they're like, well, I could listen to them, but then it would just piss off the people who actually vote. And, like, that's the thing is like, getting people out to vote and everything. Like, that's, like, I think the major issue into that whole thing is because, yeah, like, we, you know, did, like, march for our lives and everything. And, like, yeah, we have, like, more people, like, registering to vote in our generation than other generations, but it's still, like, not enough to make enough of an impact, like, with our, like, representatives. And I think that's, like, one of the major things is, like, I'm in AP government politics right now, and we're talking all about that and, like, what, you know, because they want to get reelected. Yeah. And, like, you know, that's just what they do, and it stinks.
Well, like, all teenagers, even me, so I'm not criticizing you guys all, just teenagers in general are experts at being kind of apathetic about, it's going to work itself out. It's worked itself out up until this point. I'm going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. So it's hard to... Again, I wasn't really even motivated to even, like, do anything or even take a stand in the things that I decided I was going to work on. Like, I'm going to work on this because of how I feel about that. So it's hard to wrangle their that your age group to do something, to be active about that, because for so long they've heard their parents maybe their parents go, voting doesn't really matter. My vote doesn't really matter because because I'm just one person. There's like millions of people voting or stuff like that. And really, the thing is, one vote doesn't matter by itself, but one vote does matter when it's combined with millions of other votes. It's more of an energy you put out into the universe than because you're right. Like if I got sick and didn't get to vote that day, my one vote isn't going to,
make it sway one way
or the other.
Well, and this is what the movie is ultimately exploring: is how come that is Michael, your attitude, Kevin, me, my attitude. Why was that our attitude? Mm-hmm. Like if we look 25 years back, can we see that attitude be cultivated and nurtured and planted and watered, to see the adults that we've become, in the context of this story of 8 teenagers who spend a Memorial Day weekend up in this vacation house.
Can you expound on that a bit? Just tell me the story. I mean, not an elevator pitch, but just the, know.
Yeah, go for it, Bridget.
Okay, so we have Liz and Stacy. So I'm going to be playing Stacy in the movie, and Tori's going to be playing Liz. And they used to be best friends, like all throughout middle school and everything, and they were really close. And then there was an incident that happened. Won't get into that. But then they grew apart, and Liz became this emo goth girl who is super angsty and doesn't care about anything. And then
dyes her hair purple.
And then Stacy becomes this cheerleader who's one of the most popular girls in school and has the quarterback boyfriend and great grades, and like life seems like it's perfect. And then Liz's brother dies in an accidental drowning, and Stacy really wants to reconnect with Liz and, apologize for it, and then do all these things and like bring him back up to the house. And she's like, hey, like, let's go up to the house like again, like when we were little. And Liz is like, only if I get to bring friends. And so this is kind of how this all starts. And there's lots of shenanigans and different things along the way, and it's a wild ride. And it's so it all takes place like in this cabin in the Sierras, and the chaperone is Stacy's stoner brother, who's like this he's the shame, and his girlfriend, and they're kind of like the chaperones, but really they're just off doing their little thing. And so it's pretty much like a bunch of kids like by themselves essentially in this cabin, and they're all from different, they were all like connected at some point, but then they all have become different people, and it's throwing all these different kids together into like a house and like seeing what happens.
and
long weekend.
And there's this great sort of, we talk about conflict. Like Stacy decides, because her former friend's little brother drowned, she's going to try and repair their friendship. Like she feels guilty, not of drowning the child, but that like she's been somewhat contributed to the pain in Liz's life. And Liz sees it as an opportunity to retaliate for the misery that Stacy has created for her in school. And she, Liz invites kind of all these misfit friends. And the thing that's really fantastic about their writing is it's so instinctual, and they went through the surveys and they created this ensemble of characters that come from different walks of life and their different genders and sexual orientations, and they're, some of these kids have money and some of these kids don't, and they just started creating scenes, just these kind of scenes, like these bit by bit scenes, And what you started doing especially when I would start to go through it, is they were really writing themes. Like there were thematic things that recurred, kind of like again and again and again. And we're still finding them. We're still, as we're shaping the script into the shooting script, we're still finding these little bits. And when you crack it open and you see like, this is what's inside the amber, and you get the blood and you get the DNA, then you can like go back and be like, this scene is a stegosaurus, right? Like somewhere in what they did in just trying to make a scene about different kids and how they are, you know, not getting along, or who's siding with who, or like whoever, all these like larger things have come out. You know, they laid these like these gold mines through these, you know, scenes. And then when you just tap here and you tap here and you can kind of like brush them away, you know, cut that character and get into this scene later and get out of this scene earlier. And, you know, like all these sort of, you know, kind of cliche dramatic writing things, but like you really do start to find, because the movie has some very sincere, heartwarming, touching ideas about feeling alienated and what do you do with your future, and what is the pressure of that, and where does that pressure come from, and how do you handle it, and what do you need to go forward into the future? What do you need to take with you? Because your parents tell you it's one thing, but your instincts are telling you it's something else.
Yeah.
And they just were so prolific.
It's pretty deep. It's almost like you guys are doing family therapy through this movie. Yeah. You can understand each other.
It's my family. It's my therapy, I guess.
Yeah. It's amazing because somebody who works with teenagers often, they will write something and then I finished that's done. But I guess the process of making the thing helps you realize that it's annoying to even the people who are, you know, have done this for a long time. It's annoying to know that no matter how much you like the script is never done. Even when you've shot the thing and edited the film, you're like, we should have put that there because that's, you know, it's never ever done.
Yeah.
And you can be on your 20th draft and still not be anywhere near what, like we had a draft of our film. We liked it. We were good with it. And like the week before we started shooting, we read through it one more time, just like the umpteenth time, you know, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Voila, this makes more sense now, blah, 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 blah.
The actors were going through the scenes and were telling us, and then, it was evolving as we were.
And then we got on set, and it's like, nope, that doesn't sound right. You got to say it like this, say it like this. And it's never done. We watch it now, a year later, and it's like, I still don't like this scene. You know, it's like, it's never done. You just got to do the best you can with what you have. And it's amazing to me that 17, 18-year-old kids are sitting there, like, digging that deep into the story, the character situations and the meat and bones of the script, instead of just saying, yeah, we wrote, it's done. What else do you want me to do? We're gonna go make it now, right? And it's like that you guys are digging that deep into it.
I love that it sounds like it's very character driven.
Yeah.
No, it totally is. And the thing that Patrick and I really talked about was even if they don't go on to become filmmakers, if you want to put a person on Mars, if you want to get someone elected, if you want to start a campaign, it's thousands of tiny jobs that need to get done. Yeah. And making a movie is the same thing. It's like there's just 1,000 tasks, and you can say, oh, I can't make a movie, that's overwhelming, that's too daunting. But you can say, I'm going to write the first scene.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to daydream about the title. I'm going to, you know, and if you can just kind of like keep yourself on a schedule of like completing little tasks. Mm-hmm. You know, I say this to my writing friends all the time. Like, if you could write a page a day, you could write 3 features in a year. Mm-hmm. You can just, you know, like, don't say I'm going to write 3 features in a year, because you won't. say I'll write a page every day. Maybe you won't necessarily stick to it. Life comes up, but like you could.
But
you're
you're also gonna write 10 pages in a day, one day when you sit down. So then you can have the next 9 days off, really.
Sure, and you could write 3 features and only one of them be good.
Yeah, or
like,
none
really
of them.
Good. So, but you had to write the 3 pages to get the. You had to write the 3-to-1 ratio or the 10-to-1 ratio, as it usually is in my case. Like.
I thought it. Well, yeah, because it's just as hard to write a bad script as it is to write a good script. It takes as many hours, as much time, and you really think when you're in it, it's like, this is great. And then, like, I always finish stuff and then set it down for a couple weeks, and then I go back and look at it, and I'm like, who the fuck wrote this shit? Who wrote this? It was you, but like I don't remember what. I don't even know this word. Like, why did I use that there? And the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about your script is in your pitch video, it says. You have a character that pops in and says, will there be LGBTQ representation? And you say, the other funny thing you say is, I'm offended that you even asked that question. and
white privilege.
Yeah, I'm offended you even asked that question. Which is funny because it's like, it taps into the outrage thing. Everybody's offended about something, but at the same time, you're offended about something that shouldn't be offended. Anyway, I thought it was funny. You could dig real deep into that. But back in the 90s, I know that you know this, you grew up in the 90s, there were gay people all over the place, but there was like, if there was one person at my school who was gay and we knew it, that was a rare occurrence. It's a lot different now. So I think that it's almost like, for me, like my generation, it took some catching up because I never had a problem with it, but I was not around it as much, or what people weren't as comfortable being out as they are now. So I think it's great that you have it in your Gen X movie because I know it was a thing back then, and people felt so unsure of they felt, I guess, insecure about being out or how people were going to react, because back then it was like, if you were gay, you were going to hell, and I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just saying that was he's gay. Oh my God. And I grew up in like sort of a small town. So it's like gay people were like, we don't know what to do about that gay problem. We're just going to act like it doesn't exist, and it's been happening that way until I guess the 2000s when it started to become more accepted, I guess, culturally.
Yeah.
Well, you just started thinking of them as human beings. We're all human beings.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not hard, but some people get really hung up on that human being thing. Yeah.
They do hit on that. They do take a view from the 90s more so than what it is now. So there is some of that. It goes into some of the conflict that has to do with the storyline as well.
Good.
Yeah,
Cool.
like something that was really hard for me about writing the script is that our generation has a lot of language to describe gender, sexuality.
We didn't.
And all
It
of
was
these
gay.
things.
It was gay or not. That was it.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is kind of Liz's character struggle. And writing Liz for me was really helpful because part of the pitch of the script is this queer storyline, but Liz wasn't necessarily intended to be bisexual from the get-go, but that was something that I gave her because it was something that like I needed and that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
But what was hard about writing it is that she couldn't say that because that wasn't a term that was popular in the 90s, and it wasn't a term that she had access to. I mean, Bridget and I turn on our phones and there are
some LGBTQ plus now, and it's just like there's so many different terms for like people to like identify themselves as, and like that's fantastic. Like now, like a person can say, "Hey, look, this is who I identify as," and you're like, "Wow, that's great." That's cool that you know who you are. But like, especially for Liz, like she's just like in this point, she's like, I know I'm not this, but I'm like something along the lines, but it's not exactly it's defining who I am, and that's like one of her her struggles.
I think that's great. Yeah.
And like my and why that joke in the pitch video is funny is because my friend Johnny, who says that to me, is also gay, and so we like that's kind of our back and forth in real life. But like Liz has one openly gay friend, and she's kind of known as like the lesbian at school, and so there's like this dynamic of you're alone in this, but you don't have other people to talk to. Whereas like I at school have a whole bunch of people to talk to about it. I go to performing arts school. It's amazing if you come out of that state.
That's funny. I go to a performing arts school. There's a lot of gay people around. Yeah.
Like seriously, that's a whole other story.
Right.
Really, like we are growing up in a culture that is different. Like less than 50% of our generation is identifying as solely heterosexual.
That's that's an interesting statistic.
Right. And like when you look at it, it's not like people were straight before and they're not straight now. It's that people are willing to say it and that they have the language to describe themselves.
Right. Well, that's why I think the way you guys seem to be handling it in your script is really interesting, because it deals with that exact thing. It seems like instead of being really heavy-handed about it, or like I guess sounds like maybe preachy. I don't know. Not that it wouldn't bother me either way, but I think the handling it where there's like confusion, because that is also very 90s, like I don't know who I am. I don't know this, the grunge, angsty, like that's where the angsty, like that's where I became of the term angst, is when I was an angsty 18-year-old kid, and it was sort of like a X. That's what X was about to me. It's like where Generation X is like generic. We're not really this, we're not really that. We don't really know. We're sort of in the middle. So the whole thing kind of ties into that, which I think sounds really interesting. I don't know if you can tell. I'm really excited. I cannot wait to see your movie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
They did something that is nice in that, like, if you go back and you watch a lot of those 90s movies, like, of course, there's, like, some cringy, like, homophobic humor.
Yeah.
But what you do end up seeing is, like, a tokenization of gay characters. Like, Clueless, for example. Like, she's in love with this super hot guy, right? And, like, he's clearly gay, but she, Alicia Silverstone, doesn't see it yet. And then eventually it kind of, she gets it and realizes, like, he was never really interested in her. And, like, he's still accepted and is, like, a friend, but it's, like, treated...
He doesn't have a community. It's not good gay representation if they don't have a community and if they're the only person.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So My So-Called Life, I mean, you could look back at all these 90s things, and it was like, there is a gay character.
Yeah. And
that's the progress that we were allowed.
That was the progress. That was progress for our generation. Like that there was a gay storyline on a TV show.
Yeah, it's like there's the one. That's enough.
Yeah.
Well, and you remember there used to be like a stigma of like, you wouldn't cast a gay actor to play a gay character.
Yeah.
Right? It was like straight actors like Robin Williams, would be like
Birdcage. Yeah.
I hate the Birdcage.
I'm just saying, like, there was this weird sort of like you didn't want to, like, Hollywood didn't want to out someone.
Yeah.
Right? That was like not considered cool. Yeah. So the way around it was to cast someone who's like sort of obviously clearly heterosexual to like, Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes are gonna dresses.
Yeah, and then nominate them for Academy Awards for being such great actors.
Right.
So hard to play.
Yeah. Oh, it's torture.
So, okay, so to wrap things up, we could probably keep talking to you for a long time, because what we don't always find is when we're talking to indie filmmakers I guess that's not true. We do talk to a lot of indie filmmakers who have something like serious on their mind, but your guys' angle on the movie you want to make is very, I don't know, just
interesting.
It's interesting. Like maybe it's because I'm Gen X and I get it, and it is taking me down a nostalgia trip. But so where do you want to send people to check out your campaign? Is it .com or Seed and Spark or?
Well, yeah, you could follow us on Seed and Spark. And then also we have Instagram and Twitter. So on Twitter, we are at GenRex Film. And then on Instagram, we're Generation Rex. And then we have like the links to the Seed and Spark campaign right in the bios, which is like really easy to get to because, I mean, you could go to Seed and Spark and we're actually under the, I think, almost funded part of the website. Which is really cool. And and you can, it's really easy to get like all the updates for everything right on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find us there, and it's super easy.
If they follow on Seed and Spark, which is free to do, but enormously helpful to us, you'll get all the updates that the girls post, and you'll get to follow this process really from beginning to end. Instagram and Twitter, there will be posts, of course, too, but they'll probably be slightly more
content-based. They're a bit more fun.
But that's really the...
And there'll be updates, along the way on how we're progressing with the filming, which should be starting in May. And also if we get a website set up that we'll put posts on there so you'll be able to follow along on the progress of the film.
So when you guys are going to shoot in May?
July.
Well, we're gonna start with May and then go to July. July is the main film, right?
Yes.
We got a few location shots. We're gonna start in May, and then we're gonna July is the bulk of the film.
Right, summer when teenagers don't have to go to school.
Exactly.
So we need to schedule an interview like a year. from now,
I would love to have you guys.
Because I need to hear about the journey.
I would love to have you guys back on to talk about
the production,
getting it made and stuff.
Anytime.
And definitely when you guys get it wrapped and ready to put out into the world.
Yeah.
I'm just really, really excited. I feel like I ignored the adults a little bit, but I'm constantly telling my daughter. I'm around people your age every single day. I'm constantly telling them that if you want to do something, go do it. Like, they get so. I had a student a couple years ago who loved filmmaking, loved movies, wanted to make a movie, but he was mortified about making one himself, and it was the pressure of, well, I know I'm not Scorsese. Like, nobody's Scorsese. Scorsese's Scorsese. Like, you got to go be you. You're like, nobody can be you either. Like, Scorsese couldn't be you even if he tried. And why would he? Because he's Martin Scorsese. Why would he even try? But that's what Scorsese figured out. I'm Scorsese. You're not. I am. And I was just like, go make something. Spend your summer. Make something. And let it suck. Let it be awful, because guess what? You can do this thing called do it again, and it gets better next time. But the awesome thing is you guys have like mentors who like love and trust you, and you trust them. And it seems like a magical combination. I love that. And I've been wanting to make a movie with my friend for a long time, but I can't. He lives in LA.
It's hard. Even just
your one friend.
My one friend. Yeah. Not Brad. I got to make a movie with Brad, but he's not my friend. I got a friend I want to make a movie with.
You're stuck with me.
Yeah, I'm stuck with him. So Twitter, you gave all that info. This is awesome. I'm gonna try to send people your way. I'm serious. I'm gonna show your pitch video, even with the language, to my high school students and make them feel bad. Try to make them feel bad about how they're just sitting there doing nothing, and you guys are just like them, but off doing the thing.
It'd be great if it motivates them and they get up there and start doing something. We'd love to see it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if you want to get in contact with us, we are filmreverypodcast@gmail.com. I'm Becca Meyer on Instagram and Twitter.
Balding Ewok, of course, everywhere.
Right. Everywhere. And that is it. Until next time, go make something, and we'll see you again soon.
To be continued?
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, for having us.
Thank you.
Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. And visit filmreverie.com to listen to past episodes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.